Ukrainian forces struck a large Russian warship during an overnight air raid on a base in occupied Crimea, potentially preventing Russian President Vladimir Putin from deploying more troops across the region. The Russian state media reported that the Novoscherkassk warship was damaged by guided missiles and said one person was killed and 4 others injured in the attack. Good morning, I'm Abheudaya Shrestha, and these are the headlines of the hour. Samachar Forum holds a meeting at the Prime Minister's official residence in Balwatar. Discussions held on analysis of the government's one-year performance and upcoming National Assembly election. Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal directs underperforming ministers to vacate their positions, admits lapses in own work, declares the nation will see fast development in this decade. Ukraine strikes a large Russian warship in Crimea with cruise missiles, killing at least 1 person, hinders any Russian attempt to seize more Ukrainian territory along the Black Sea coast. And Liverpool climbs to the top of the English Premier League table, blanking Burnley 2-0. Manchester United also edges past Aston Villa 3-2. Samachar Forum held a meeting at the Prime Minister's official residence in Balwatar this morning. Leaders of the ruling coalition parties, CPN Maoist Center, Janata Samajwadi Party and CPN Unified Socialist, as well as the Netrabikram Chand-led Communist Party, were in participation at the meeting. Netrabikram Chand, against whom an arrest warrant has been issued, also attended the meeting with Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal. Leaders have said that the meeting dwelt on the analysis of the one-year term of the current government, efforts to make the forum more active, and the upcoming National Assembly election. Meanwhile, the Secretariat of the Prime Minister said that the meeting was called to hold discussions on contemporary political issues. Marking 1 year in his post, Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal has announced of a new government work modality and suggested he will not be lenient on underperforming ministers. The Premier also expressed commitment to change his modus operandi. Addressing the nation from Singha Darbar yesterday, Premier Dahal said that he was not in a mood to overlook shortcomings on the part of anyone in the government and directed anyone who could not perform to leave their posts. The Prime Minister said although the government did not fail, it failed to perform as he expected. He further added that he would limit his engagements to predetermined and mandatory programs. He also said the central government will address the issues of implementation of federalism raised by chief ministers. Prime Minister Dahal also expressed commitments to conclude bills that have been pending at the Parliament through the nearing winter session. Likewise, he also said that political appointments at universities would be stopped and that ambassadors who have failed to perform would be called back. Prime Minister Dahal also informed that preparations were underway to form a commission for administrative reforms to distribute land to landless squatters, make the country self-sufficient in medicine, and ensure the supply of Melamchi drinking water to Kathmandu residents. He also rejected the growing idea that there were no opportunities in the country. Likewise, the Prime Minister committed of raising investments in the sports sector and development infrastructure. Meanwhile, main opposition CPN-UML has called the Prime Minister's work execution in the past 1 year weak. While it is natural for the opposition to carry such a sentiment, there are leaders within the ruling alliance that feel no different. CPN-UML has called the Prime Minister's address to the nation yesterday as a cheap attempt for popularity, adding that the Premier had taken credit for works that his government had not done. The opposition is of the opinion that the past 1 year was a waste, considering what it calls discouraging indicators of foreign affairs, economy, society, and growing public frustration. General Secretary of Nepali Congress, Gagan Thapa, called the Premier's address a weak one and said that the second year would show whether he fulfills his commitment. Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal has said that changes would be made in the existing practice of programs and policy and budget formation. Based on his proposed plans, the plans and priorities of the next fiscal year's budget would be presented in the Nepalese month of Fagun of the ongoing year itself. The Premier has also said adequate suggestions will be taken from the people's representatives and the general public while forming the government's programs and policies and the budget. In order to expedite development works, the Premier said that works would be done in at least 2 shifts and a barrack model would be implemented. He reiterated the government's plan to improve the country's credit rating and ease industrialization ahead of the investment summit. Likewise, the Prime Minister said the government has prioritized forging power trade agreements with Bangladesh and China. Meanwhile, industrialists and economists have suggested that the government should prioritize and ensure the implementation of its announcements. The Premier also announced of subsidies for airlines willing to operate in Abheudaya and Pokhara international airports that were constructed with huge investments. Likewise, Prime Minister Dahal also mentioned during his address that the government would provide farmers with subsidized loans and enlist farmers for grants. The Premier announced the ongoing decade would be a decade of fast development for the country and took credit for the 26% increase in remittance. Minister for Foreign Affairs N.P. Saud has said around 100 Nepali nationals who had been recruited in the Russian army have been missing and several others have been reported injured. Minister Saud said that Nepali nationals who had gone to Russia for employment, education and travel purposes are suspected to have been recruited in the Russian army. He said that based on the complaints filed at the ministry, the number of Nepali nationals who have been recruited in the Russian army could be much higher. Minister Saud said that the Russian army had informed regarding the death of 7 Nepali nationals and that the authority has expressed concern regarding the recruitment of Nepali citizens in the army. The minister said that families and friends of 100 individuals who have gone missing or have been injured had filed complaints at the ministry. He maintained that the Russian ambassador to Nepal had been summoned at the ministry and had been urged to correspond with the Russian government regarding Nepal's concern for recruiting its citizens. He also said that efforts were underway to repatriate Nepali nationals who have been held hostage in Ukraine. The foreign minister claimed that Nepali national Bipin Joshi, who has been held hostage by Hamas, is safe and that efforts are underway for his release. Police have arrested an individual who was allegedly involved in the murder of Rupesh Swarnakar, the principal of Bal Ekata boarding school in Bara. Police have arrested the main shooter, Sujit Singh of India's Bihar state, involved in the murder of Principal Swarnakar on 30th of October, almost 2 months back. Superintendent of Police of Bara, Suresh Prasad Kafle, said that 2 rounds of shots were fired in his leg yesterday after Singh tried to escape. He had been taken to the provincial hospital in Kalaya for treatment. Police who had reached the border of Bishrampur rural municipality based on a tip-off recovered a pistol from Singh, who had been hiding there. In our Public Voice segment, we had asked people in several provinces, what can the youth generation do to preserve culture and tradition? Let's take a look at what they had to say.
जो जुनै जातमा जन्मे पनि प्राउड फिल गर्नु पर्यो अनि त्यसमा आफ्नो रुटसँग कनेक्ट भएर जे जस्तो हुन्छ भाषा संस्कृति जोगेर्ना गर्ने एक्टिभिटीज सँगै अगाडि बढ्नु पर्यो
युवाले सिक्नु पर्यो हामीले पनि सिकाउँदै छौं
युवाहरुलाई चाहिँ हामीले चाहिँ हाम्रो भाषा प्रतिको मोहलाई पहिला अगाडि ल्याउनु पर्छ जस्तो लाग्छ भाषा नभइकन हाम्रो संस्कृति पनि बचाएर राख्न सक्दैनौं
हाम्रो संस्कृतिहरु बाहिर देशसम्म पुर्याउनु पर्यो अनि त्यसपछि हामीले डिफरेन्ट यस्तो अर्गनाइजेसनहरु गरिराख्नु पर्यो
आफ्नो कल्चरलाई शो गर्न पर्छ
पितापुर्खाका विभिन्न ज्ञानहरु धारणाहरुको संरक्षण गर्दै यसको चाहिँ अहिलेको युवाहरुले यसको संरक्षण गर्नुपर्छ
पश्चिमी भेषभूषा कल्चरलाई चाहिँ त्यागेर आफ्नो नेपाली मौलिकपनलाई चाहिँ त्यसको चाहिँ जगेर्ना गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ
युवाहरुले चाहिँ विभिन्न किसिमका गाउँघरमा भइरहेका हरेक साना साना कार्यक्रममा पनि सहभागी गराउनु पर्दछ
हामीले विदेशीको सिक्नु भएन
हाम्रो संस्कार संस्कृति जोगाउनको लागि चाहिँ अग्रजहरुबाट सिक्नु पर्यो आफ्नो भेषभूषाहरुलाई चाहिँ अब सार्वजनिक कार्यक्रमतिर झल्काउनु पर्यो
भन्दा अगाडिको अग्रज व्यक्तित्वसँग सिक्ने त्यसपछि आफूले जान्ने भएपछि आउँदो पुस्तालाई चाहिँ सिकाउनु पर्छ
युवा पुस्ताहरुलाई बाहिर जानबाट रोक्ने
गीत संगीतको पाटोबाट पनि अगाडि बढाउनु पर्यो
विभिन्न जात जातिहरूले मनाउँदै आएको मौलिक परम्पराहरू युवा पुस्ताले निरन्तरता गर्नु पर्यो
It's time now for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
Here's the question. Why has the country failed to become self-sufficient in rice? Your options are A, no encouragement for farmers, B, lack of labor force, and C, import-based mentality. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B, or C, and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. And it's time now for the international updates. Ukraine struck a large Russian landing warship in Crimea with cruise missiles in an overnight attack that killed at least one person and could hinder any Russian attempt to seize more Ukrainian territory along the Black Sea coast. The Russian Defense Ministry said Ukraine had used air-launched missiles to attack the Crimean port of Abheudaya and that the Novoscherkassk large landing ship had been damaged. The Kremlin said Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu had briefed President Vladimir Putin in detail about the attack. Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine in 2014 in a move Kiev and the West condemned as an illegal seizure. Ukrainian Air Force spokesperson Yuri Ahanat said he thought it would be hard for the Novoscherkassk, which can carry tanks and armored vehicles and be used to land troops ashore, to re-enter service. Gaza authorities dug up a mass grave and buried 80 bodies of unidentified Palestinians yesterday. The Ministry of Health said the bodies were handed over by Israel through Kerim Salom crossing. Members of the Islamic Waqf photographed the bodies for future identification before putting them into a long ditch at a Rafah cemetery. According to the Islamic Waqf, the bodies were collected from Israeli ground operation in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Palestinian health authorities said nearly 21,000 people had been killed in Israeli strikes, with thousands more feared buried under rubble. Israel says it is doing what it can to protect civilians and blames Hamas for putting them in harm's way by operating among them, which Hamas denies. But even Israel's closest ally, the United States, has said it should do more to reduce civilian deaths from what U.S. President Joe Biden has called indiscriminate bombing. A blast occurred near the Israeli embassy in New Delhi yesterday evening, and all staff were unharmed following the explosion. Officials were still inspecting the area, but it had been reopened to the general public. There was no information suggesting anyone on the street had been hurt. Israel urged its citizens in India, specifically in New Delhi, to exercise caution. Israel's National Security Council said in a statement issued by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office that the blast may have been an attack. Israeli missions around the world have been on alert amid a rise in anti-Semitic attacks since Israel launched its counteroffensive against Hamas militants in the Gaza Strip. Nothing had been found in the search operation 3 hours after the blast. A source from the National Intelligence Agency yesterday said Turkey hit around 50 targets used by Kurdish militants in Syria in retaliation for the 12 Turkish soldiers that were killed in Iraq over the weekend. The targets were located in Syria's Kamishli, Ain al-Arab and Amuda, and were facilities used for military. Turkish National Intelligence Agency released a video yesterday which it said showed Turkish security forces hitting facilities and bases used by Kurdish militants in Syria. On Saturday, Turkey's defense ministry said 12 Turkish soldiers were killed during fighting with the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party in northern Iraq, prompting Ankara to conduct a barrage of strikes there and in Syria. A mass funeral was held for 19 of the 20 victims of an attack in Gatumba in western Burundi yesterday. Gunmen on Friday killed at least 20 people and wounded 9 others near Burundi's western border with the Democratic Republic of Congo in an attack claimed by the Red Tabara rebel group. Those killed in the Friday evening raid on a village called Vugizu included 12 children, 2 pregnant women, and a police officer. Red Tabara, which has been battling Burundi's government from bases in eastern Congo since 2015, claimed on the social media platform X to have killed 9 soldiers and 1 police officer. Local residents said they heard sounds of gunfire and explosions during the attack. Red Tabara previously said it had attacked and destroyed equipment at the country's international airport in Bujumbura in September, although no casualties were reported.